Welcome to I May Be Wrong.
I don't know what this world is coming to,
but I don't think so. We're broadcasting from the greater Nashville area, the home of country music, beyond the borders of political correctness and identity politics. Facts and faith are our demarcations. Truth lights our path.
Here's the Barry White of Podcast Radio,
the Venerable Alfonso Ashworth.
Well, welcome to another exciting episode of I May Be Wrong, but I don't think so. Of course, we got a great program for you. We got another guest coming on that's been on before, and I'm very excited to have him back. We love our veterans. We honor our veterans, and I could think of no one better than Todd McKinley, who's coming on just in a few minutes. We're going to get him back on to see what's happening in East Tennessee. He wants to talk about that. Of course, we got a lot happening that's going on right now with the primaries, with the what's going on in Iowa. Happened in Iowa, we don't know. What happened in New Hampshire, we do know. Bernie Sanders is leading the way in the Democratic Party at the moment. It's very, very conflicting, very confusing that the socialist is at the head of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is in shambles. I don't know if they can recover after all this nonsense with the impeachment trial that just went just really made them out to be sore losers. But we got a lot we want to talk about. Before we get started, one, you can help me. You can join me at I May Be Wrong, but I don't think so.com. You can follow the show. You can subscribe to the show. You can contribute to the show. If you would like to donate to the show, you can do that as well at I May Be Wrong, but I don't think so.com. You can also join me Wednesdays. I do a live broadcast. You can join us on Facebook. I see that some are joining already. Sherry Orange says, I love your Trump hat. I love it too. It's one of my favorites. I'm very excited about this one. Of course, I want to welcome you into the chat room. If you have a comment or a question, you can post it, and I will try to get it on the air to our guest. Of course, I want to play just something really quickly. This is something that's really confusing me right now, especially when it comes to the black community and who they're going to give their votes for. Listen to what Mayor Bloomberg had to say about stop and frisk.
They just keep saying, oh, it's a disproportionate percentage of a particular ethnic group. That may be, but it's not a disproportionate percentage of those who witnesses and victims describe as committing the murder. In that case, incidentally, I think we disproportionately stop whites too much and minorities too little.
Now, this is the candidate that the Democrats are probably betting on to come and save the day. And this is a candidate that is a billionaire that makes Donald Trump look like a pauper. But, of course, these are the Democrats. This is what they're up against, and we're going to see how this shakes out. But let's get to our guest. Of course, Todd McKinley was born and raised in Kingsport, Tennessee. It's in East Tennessee, if you don't know where that's located. Of course, and he was also served 20 years in the U.S. Army. During his time in the Army, he was stationed in the White House Communications Agency on staff with Vice President Dick Cheney. During his time in the Army, Todd saw combat in Iraq and Afghanistan, served as the district commander for the American Legion in East Tennessee. Currently, he is an associate staff member of the Trump White House, does advanced work for President Trump, ran for Congress in Tennessee 1st District in 2018, and he's exploring a run for Congress in Tennessee 1st District in 2020. Welcome to the show, Mr. Todd McKinley.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on your show. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. Look, I'm wanting to hear your thoughts. Of course, we want to know what's happening in East Tennessee, and we want to give you an opportunity to share with my audience what is happening in East Tennessee.
Well, I can tell you a lot of things are happening, especially now that we have an open congressional seat here in the 1st Congressional District. You know, it's one of those things that rarely happens. We send somebody to Washington, D.C., and they stay for many decades. We send somebody there, and they get reelected year after year after year.
Right.
But 2020, we have an opportunity to basically send someone new up there. And, of course, we have some of the usual suspects, if you will. who are going to be running for this seat. And of course, there's probably some outsiders that are also going to be running. So a tremendous opportunity coming up in 2020 for the voters. If we can get voters to come out to the polls and get them registered and get them out there to vote. But as you know, you're from Tennessee. Tennessee is one of the worst states whenever it comes to voting. I think we are last in voter turnout and next to last in voter registration per capita. But 2020 we have a tremendous opportunity. But as I look around, our district, we have, different school districts that are, kind of doing things behind the scenes under the table that are, that the local public and taxpayers have no idea about. In my own home county, for example, we have a new school going up, school consolidation issues that parents had no idea that it was going on. And some of that has to do with, people just not being active and paying attention to their, local governments. So that's going on. And of course, we also have a few other issues here with regards to health care, education, and then of course, jobs is a big problem up here. But we have an opportunity to, whenever we elect our next congressman, to send somebody up there to basically fight for all of those things, to be able to help the situation here in Northeast Tennessee, make it a lot better for the folks living here. And also the future generations, so the kids that grow up here don't have to actually leave the area to seek, to seek a better life, to seek a job, and to seek better health care. So we have an opportunity, but it's going to be up to the voters to see that and realize it.
Well, of course, early voting starts today
right.
in some areas. And, of course, we want to let people know that if you're listening, it starts today in my community, of course. What's happening in terms of course, all politics are local. When it comes down to it, whatever happens in Washington, whatever has happened on the federal level, ultimately the problem gets solved in the local communities, just like you're just talking about. In your opinion of what's happening in D.C., what's going on right now with the Congress, what's going on with the White House, because you've been in the White House, you know what it's like to be there. What can we do as individuals to ensure that our elected officials are held accountable for the decisions they make that affect us?
Right. Well, let me point out real quick that the early voting that started is just for the March primary, which is
right.
for some local seats in the presidency. The congressional and state races are going to be that primary is in August, and that early voting will be late July.
Yes.
So just to point that out, the difference between what's going on in the election, because some people will you'll show up in August and say, "Hey, come out and vote," and
right.
they'll be like, "Oh, I've already voted in March," and it's like, "No, that was a different election."
Correct.
So some people don't know that there is a difference, so I just want to point that out.
Yes.
But as you said, all politics is local, and that's true. But that doesn't necessarily mean it has to do with your local government. What happens in Washington D.C. does affect it's the trickle down effect, as you said. If you think about it, the bad decisions that go on in Washington, they affect you on a state level, and it also affects you at the local level, because you have to think about it. On a local level, you also have your state government. Whether they're passing good or bad legislation, especially bad legislation, it compresses and compounds along with the federal legislation to basically crush the people down here in the counties and the cities that are just trying to make it. Then, of course, if you have local government that has even more oppressive, legislation on top of that, they're just squeezing the people, and especially working class people, dry of every nickel and every penny that they have. And, pretty soon they have very little money to go around, whether it's to send their kids to college or whether that's just have a little bit of money to retire on or for their own health care. And speaking of health care, Northeast Tennessee is a very unhealthy area. And it's, I think, one of the most unhealthiest in the country. A lot of folks don't realize that. And of course, we have some of the highest cancer rates in the country. And of course, obesity, heart disease, and cardiorespiratory diseases and things like that, diabetes, and a lot of these things are preventable. But the bad decisions that have been made in Washington has made it hard for people to have their preventative care doctor, and be able to go out and treat things before they even become a major problem. So that's a problem that was created in Washington D.C. and it came about even before Obamacare. So that's why we need to have a market-based system, where your patient and doctor are at the center of the health care. You have your primary care physician being able to treat you for all the little small things before they become big problems, and we don't have that. And another thing is, the prescription drug issue. Of course, President Trump is addressing that. I'm hoping he gets it done. But this is thing that's been going on for a long time, where you have the pharmaceutical lobby that's essentially bought off and paid for a lot of these politicians in Washington, and even at the state level, where they pass bad legislation or they don't address certain legislation, such as prescription drug patent reform. If you think about this, for example, if I'm a pharmaceutical company and I develop, say a drug that, treats diabetes or what have you, I get a patent on that for so many years. And I can charge a decent or a large amount of money. And these are drugs that people need to survive. And so at the end of my patent, I can do just a few little small things and renew my patent for another 5 years or 10 years and continue to charge an exorbitant amount of money, which makes it hard for other companies to be able to, come out with the generic drugs or even have a competitive drug.
Well, on the other hand, Todd, isn't the president trying to work with the pharmaceutical companies? They're trying to lower the cost of some of these drugs. And as you just said, there are pockets in the country that are not doing so great. I think we get sort of delusional about the economy because we hear all the great numbers. We hear everything that's going well for some people. But how do you address this issue when you got socialists that want to take over the healthcare system, who want to take over all of our daily lives? How do we address that directly in regards to what you're talking about?
Right. So, the president, you said he is trying to address this with the pharmaceutical companies, basically
right.
appeal to the better nature, if you will. And I'm certainly a capitalist, and I have no problem with, pharmaceutical companies making money, and they should. But whenever it comes to something that's very a life-saving drug or something
right.
that people need to survive, I think we need to make some reforms there and ensure that people can get drugs at a cheaper cost, or at least have a competitive drug, that's out there. So I'm not against pharmaceutical companies making money, but I want to see people be able to survive. But as far as the socialists and so forth, you think about this: you save money your whole life, and your life savings is only going to take you so far.
Right.
But what socialists want to do is basically tell you, you've done the wrong things for saving all that money. I could spend it better than you, so I'm going to take it and give it to some of your neighbors and some of your people who live across town who've not done the right things, who've went out and spent the money as they get it, and so since they made bad decisions, I'm going to go ahead and reward them because they voted for me with your money. And then that's really what socialism is. And eventually you run out of other people's money. If we took every penny from every billionaire and basically liquidated all their assets, all their companies, took it over, made it public, you would only be able to fund the government. If you took every billionaire in this country, you'd only be able to fund the government for 6 months. So at the end of that, there's no more industry. There's no more businesses that they own. So they can't employ you. They can't create products and so forth that you go out and buy. All that's gone. So you fund the government for 6 months if you took every penny from every billionaire. But this is what socialists want to do. This is what Bernie Sanders wants to do.
I'm surprised, and I'm surprised that so many young people. No, I'm not. I know this is generational. Generationally, every 30, 40 years, we go through this process where another generation is coming up, and they think that somehow the government owes them a free education, free health care, free transportation, free. And it's just that's not feasible. As you just said, even if you took every dollar from every billionaire, it would only go so far. And then you're back with taxing the middle class. That's right. Where it comes back to, is the hardworking people who are trying to save, who are trying to send their children to college, who are trying to afford their health care, who are trying to buy their medication. They get punished because they made wise decisions early on, and someone else gets rewarded for not making good, wise decisions. Well, Todd, of course, you've brought out some points that's happening in East Tennessee. Let's talk about what's happening in a broader sense in the state of Tennessee with the situation with the governor and this refugee relocation a policy that he's wanting to push forward. How do you feel about that, especially as someone who could be running for office? How would you address the governor with that issue?
Well, so one thing people need to realize is the refugee resettlement program refugees are not illegals, so that's a completely different situation. Some people put them all in one basket. So
correct.
Completely, yeah. Refugees are a legal form of immigration, if you will. But refugees, at the end of the day, are not supposed to stay in your states or in your country permanently. Refugees are only supposed to be able to seek asylum for a temporary basis. But the problem is, refugees never go back to their home countries because we never force them to go back. We never make it safer or better in their home countries so they can go back. What should happen with these refugees, instead of bringing them to Tennessee or to the United States in general, send them to a nation that's close in culture, close in language and religion and so forth that they're accustomed to. Instead of bringing them to the United States, where essentially you put them in clusters and where they never have to really assimilate. At the end of the day, it makes it hard for them to actually get ahead. It makes it hard for them to get an education, to know the culture, to know the language, and all of this, and to basically work with other people within their community. So they basically stick to their own, if you will, which makes other people resent them, and at the same time they resent everyone else. And of course, it creates mistrust amongst the different communities instead of making everybody one community. And so you end up having crime, you end up having the black market economy and all sorts of other things. And at the end of the day, you see within those communities where, like say, Omar, for example, and the various the folks in the squad, they essentially become radicalized even in this country. And you see a lot of homegrown terrorism out of this, whether it's people that are just going to go out and do some sort of shooting or plan bombings or things of that nature. And this happens on a regular basis. The FBI is tracking, I forget how many thousands of such people who've come over here, whether they've been refugees or, come over here legally and became citizens, but never left those communities and never assimilated. So, there's problems that could brew as a result. But, for the most part, I think we should send them to countries that are similar to them. It would benefit them in the long run. And at the same time, it would benefit our country because, we wouldn't have to support them with our tax dollars, with our various government programs, with our, say, education departments, healthcare. They wouldn't be on the healthcare rolls. It would free up a lot of the resources that American citizens need to be able to get ahead, especially, the working poor and the middle class just trying to get by. But if we put, tens of thousands of them in our communities, they're going to burden even more a system that's already overburdened as it is. So I would tell the governor, essentially, no, you shouldn't accept any refugees, unless there is true triggers in place that would be able to send them back to their home countries at some point, but not keep them for the long term.
But that's where the loophole is.
And once they get here, of course, like I said, every taxpayer in Tennessee is going to be taking care of them for the most part. And at the end of the day, the scarce jobs that we already, the few jobs that are out there, now you're going to have more people competing for them because legally they can't compete for your jobs at the same time. And
especially in communities that you're addressing in places like East Tennessee that's already struggling, and then you bring in other people who are dependent on those resources. It just makes it more difficult to address these issues we already have. Of course, I want to give some comments on Facebook. One of my Facebook followers says they're already radicalized. Many of them they're coming here, some of them are already radicalized when they get here. And of course, Sherry Orange says socialism is simply sharing the misery, and says Todd is right. Eventually, you run out of other people's money. I just want to get those comments in to let people know that they're listening to what you're saying.
And that's absolutely true. And, I've served in Iraq and Afghanistan and worked with a lot of the, interpreters over there. And, of course, some local nationals over there who helped us and who were really good people. If at the end of the day, we need to bring them over here because they did the right thing to help us. And, of course, we vetted them. We know who they are. We know who their families are. if we're bringing in just ones and twos like that, who are going to end up getting murdered in their home country, I could see bringing folks like that in because they did the right thing by us.
Right.
And I've had interpreters as we've been out on missions in Iraq and other places that said, hey, so-and-so's got this. He just said, go get the gun or whatever. You can shoot these people. And of course, we didn't know what they were saying. Of course, we think they're just having a regular conversation. And he saved people's lives by saying that. So we were able to grab these guys up before they could leave the key leader engagements and go actually grab their AKs and shoot us.
Right.
Because we were at a true disadvantage in situations like that. And of course, by the fact that we had great interpreters who were willing to step up and say that, it saved lives. So those types of individuals are targeted in their home country. So we should do the right thing by them and bring them over here if they want to. And of course, we don't necessarily put them all in the same community. We put them, disperse them around the country where they can assimilate. And I know several of the interpreters that I have.
Yeah, but that's not helping because eventually they migrate toward those who they best identify with. So you still wind up with pockets of individuals in different parts of the communities.
Yeah.
But in case, I want to thank you for bringing up the point about what's going on even today with our military that are under attack in these other countries. We just recently lost some soldiers that were attacked by those we're supposed to be helping.
Right.
And I want to bring that out, that we just need to remember that we are still in a battle.
We are. And you think about it, this coming September 11th, it's 19 years. Then, of course, 2003, we went into Iraq.
Right.
And, of course, so that we're pushing 20 years in each of those places. And now we're in other countries, So we're not going to go there and win hearts and minds. And at the same time, we're not going to lose militarily. We're going to spend trillions of dollars, though, and basically blow a hole in our budgets. And,
Correct.
Of course, at the same time, mount more debt on top of the American people, which we're never going to be able to pay off. We're not going to lose any of these wars, but we're not really fighting a war against a known enemy, if you will. It's not like we're fighting Japan, Imperial Japan in World War II,
Correct.
or Nazi Germany. We're sitting there basically making ourselves a target where ones and twos can come up and kill us here and there. And of course,
we're policing. We're
right,
policing.
Essentially, that's what we're doing. And of course, we're giving these countries, untold billions of dollars every year. And for what reason? Most of that money goes missing by the people at the top, or it gets siphoned off somewhere, down a little bit lower, where you have some of the tribal elders that'll take a lot of the money and use it for their own needs. But it never really gets to the people where you want it to go anyway. So we're never going to win hearts and minds. You can't buy the hearts and minds. We can only fund, the basically terrorist activity that's killing us. We should pull out of some of these countries and have what I call an over the horizons presence, where we can be stationed in friendly countries that are our allies. And if we need to step in and do something, like say for example the Straits of Hormuz, where we need to keep open the lines of communication or the shipping lanes, we can step in and say, hey, you need to back off, Iran, and essentially keep those shipping lanes open. But just camping out in these countries, we just make ourselves targets. And at the end of the day, we're not going to lose to anybody anyway.
Right.
But we'll end up defeating ourselves, kind of like how we did in Vietnam. We defeated ourselves there.
Yes.
We didn't lose militarily.
We just didn't win the hearts and the minds of the people, and the politicians distorted what was actually happening in Vietnam, and that's where it led to us just packing up and leaving.
Exactly, and the American people lost the appetite, and of course,
right.
The American people lost trust in their government. Which I always say, you should have a level of distrust in your government at any level, because you get folks in there that are going to look out for their own needs or their own cronies. So you should always look at your government as suspect anyway. And every so often we should kick out those who are in office as it is, which leads to another thing, term limits, which is something we should institute in Washington D.C. as it is. We limit our president to two 4-year terms. Why not Congress?
Right.
Why can't we limit Congress to maybe 12 years in each house? That's 24 years in total.
Yeah, if you can't get it done, if you can't get it done in that amount of time, you're just not doing what you should be doing anyway. We got about a minute and maybe a couple of minutes. Tell me what you think going forward with this year, with the presidential election. Where do you see this thing shaking out, and what should people be aware of?
Well, beware of all the nice false promises of free stuff, and it's not free. It's not free. Someone's paying for it,
right?
And at the end of the day, it's really going to be you and the people in your community that's going to pay for it, and it's really going to only hurt you in the long run. It's not going to benefit you in any way. So that's something to be aware of. And you may not like President Trump the way he delivers, his speech or some of the stuff he says or some of the four-letter words that he uses. But he's getting things done for the American people, and it's what we need. He's not this career standard politician, which is what we should really send to Washington, whether you're electing a congressman, a senator, or send to Nashville as a state rep or state senators and so forth, and even at the local level. Don't have any fear of looking up anybody that's new running for office. Just because they've never held a public office, it doesn't mean that they're not the right person for the job. I served 20 years in the Army, and looking at running, like you said, for Congress yet again, or looking at other options. But you said I worked at the White House. I did so in the Army for 6.5 years, and I've also served as an associate staff member with the White House,
right.
with President Trump's administration. So there's a lot of experience that I bring to the table, and a lot of insight and connections that I would bring to the table if fortunate enough to run for the office and be elected. But it's going to be up to the people to show up to the polls to vote and say enough of this career politician, enough of the insiders. And there's going to be a number of the insiders that are going to be running here for this office, and hoping that the people will look at the nice commercials that they're going to be able to run and say, hey, this is who I really am, which in reality, that's not really who they are.
Right.
Look at the person and investigate them. Basically, do your homework and your due diligence. And at the end of the day, you'll find that the people that have probably held office and run for some of these seats aren't always necessarily the right person for the job.
Well, Todd, I want to really thank you for coming back on the show for a second visit. I always get a lot of information, a lot of insight, and a lot of wisdom from your experiences. And, of course, we really praying for your part that if you decide to run, we pray for you. We pray for your family, because it is a family that gets involved when these elections. And we want to thank you for serving this country with honor. And, of course, God bless you, and God bless everything that you're doing. And I'd like to have you back on to continue these conversations. But I really want to thank you for coming on.
Yes,
today.
sir. And I hope to come back on. And like you said, it is about family. And if you're a family person, or if you're a praying person, pray for my family. Pray for my mom, who just recently got diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah.
So that's one of those big blows. That's
it's tough.
It is, and it's weighing on the decision too. But my mom keeps telling me, you should do it. You should do it because, I feel like you're the right person to go out there and do it, because she knows who I am.
Right.
But, at the end of the day, pray for your own family at the same time. Pray for this country.
Yes.
And, and I appreciate it. And I'll be praying for everybody else in this country, and pray that Governor Lee makes the right decision on refugees and the red flag laws that are coming up.
That's right. God bless you,
All
brother.
Right. Thank you, sir. Bye now.
Of course, that was Todd McKinley. We've had him on before. And we want to thank him for coming back again, and look forward to hearing more from Todd, because he has a lot of knowledge in the area. Of course, in East Tennessee, he served the country, as he just said, distinctly with honors in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. And he's also served his time in the White House. So I want to thank Todd for coming on. I want to thank all those that are in the chat room. Of course, I see Sherry Orange, Ruby Ruffin, who says nothing is free. And I agree with Ruby. Ruby is one of my supporters. I see that Cecil is in the chat room. And, of course, Ken Burnett was in the chat room. Been a lot of people there today. Of course, we want to thank everyone that supports I May Be Wrong, but I Don't Think So, the show. We are out here. We're trying to get information out to our listeners. We're trying to get these politicians to be held accountable. When Joe Biden is out here and others out here that's saying that the president is bad for the country, he's divisive. Of course, I don't agree with everything that President Trump says and does. I don't agree with what no politician, everything that they say and do. That's why we hold them accountable at the voting booth. When it's time to vote, you go vote. You have a voice. You go and exercise your vote. But other than that, we have to pray for our leaders and pray that they continue to make good choices for this country. And I think President Trump, by and large, has done a great job in his first term, and I think he deserves another term. And I'm going to support him as long as I think he's doing the right thing according to our Constitution. Of course, I want to thank you If you've come on today, tell others about the show. Share this show. We have guests come on. We have commentary. We have people that are talking about a broad range of subjects. And, of course, I want to thank Paula. I see that she's listening in today. Thank you, Paula, for chiming in on the show. She's one of our supporters as well. And you can do that. You can support us at I May Be Wrong, but I don't think so. Of course, as usual, I want to say God bless you and God bless America and peace.
You've been listening to Alfonso Ashworth, the Barry White of Podcast Radio. Go forth and share his message. I may be wrong, but I don't think so. Remember, no two people can ever occupy the same place at the same time. You were uniquely and wonderfully made. Born an original. Don't die a copy. God bless. Peace.